Alright, we're live. Nice. Okay, so all this is going to be recorded now.
Okay.
So be on your best behavior.
Should I mute it?
Where's the... Yeah, mute it for now. Oh no, it's before you mute it. Hey everybody, we're just getting set up, so hang on, we'll start in just a couple of moments. Where's Rocco? Wait, Rocco can't see us.
Can you see the screen? Mute this one.
Rocco can't get in. All right, great. Hey, Rocco.
Hey,
Okay, cool. What? Uh, all right.
Stop thinking.
What?
Did you turn off your mic?
Yeah, I just. Okay, wait. Is your volume on? You turn it up. Rocco, so you. Okay, you're
It's
good.
live right now.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think we're all live and we should all be set.
For people who can only see
yeah,
the
I'm just gonna.
Yeah. So right now people can only see the PowerPoint. But I guess we'll just go with that.
I think it's from Rocco.
Wait, let me just do this first. All right. So we're talking here. Oh, we're looking here. Okay. So I think that should be working, right? Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. This is so weird. Sorry about this.
Need a
One sec.
podcast with this thing.
I did.
No, that
Oh,
was today.
Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. All right. Hey everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Sorry about that technical problem, but we think we got it all sorted out. My name is Kerry Wang. I'm a rising junior at NYU Stern studying finance and information systems.
I'm Julie Chen. I'm also a rising junior at Stern, and I am studying finance and management.
Yeah, so we're super excited to have you guys here today, and we're really glad a lot of you guys could come out. I guess just to talk about why we kind of wanted to host this webinar is me and Julie both got interested in consulting pretty early on in college, and we felt that was a really interesting and dynamic industry to go into after college, but we felt that it was pretty underrepresented at Stern, and comparatively to other college campuses in America, there's a lot less people who recruit into consulting. And we didn't really understand why, but we thought it was maybe because, you know, there's just a lack of exposure to consulting at NYU for one reason or whatever. And we also felt that, you know, other industries within business were much more highly exposed, most notably finance. And while finance is great and obviously a great industry to go into as well, we really like consulting, and we wanted to help really give consulting that same kind of exposure as well. So our hopes with this presentation is to really help introduce the consulting to a lot of the incoming freshmen and the sophomores in the crowd, and then to also help the rising juniors and seniors with the recruiting. Because recruiting season is obviously coming up very soon for a lot of us, and you know, we wanted to help our peers you know, navigate through that as smoothly as possible. So let me put up the presentation real quick. Okay, so that should be good. Okay, great. So just to kind of run through an agenda of what we will be talking about. First, we're going to go into an introduction of what consulting is for maybe some of the underclassmen who might not have really heard much about it. And then we'll have Rocco. He's a consultant from Deloitte. He was kind enough to join us to talk a little bit about, you know, the work he does, the day in the life of a consultant. So he'll be on to speak for a little bit as well, and we're really happy to have him here. And then finally, we'll talk about the resources at NYU for aspiring consultants, and then finally go through a timeline of the recruiting season that's coming up. So let's just jump right into it then. So for many of the underclassmen and maybe some of the upperclassmen as well, the biggest question in your head is, what is consulting? And I think one of the clearest ways to illustrate this is from a quote that I heard from a consultant before, who said that consulting is kind of like being a business doctor. and it's pretty accurate because a consultant is someone who comes into a company or a nonprofit or any organization really to help advise on a certain problem that organization has been experiencing, whether that problem is declining profits or wanting to expand into a new international market, but they don't know how. The problems can vary from a whole different variety of things, but a consultant is someone who is brought in from a third-party firm to analyze the data, to look at the problem and take a really deep dive into that problem, and then finally give a recommendation to the client. So much like a doctor, a consultant is someone who comes in to diagnose the problem and then finally prescribe a cure to that company to solve that problem. And just to give a couple of examples of certain projects that consultants have worked on. For example, McKinsey worked on a strategy rethink for the Bank of England, which is obviously a very high-profile and high-level project that has the potential to impact the economic system of an entire country. And Deloitte once worked on an overhaul of the University of Iowa's university system. Because they have many different satellite schools, how to bring them all together and standardize the systems there. So you see that consulting, the problems can range from a whole variety of industries and types of problems, but a lot of the skill sets and a lot of the type of work across those different projects is going to be similar. And that's what we're kind of try to help explain today, is what is that kind of skills that you need, what is the type of work you'll be doing. So to get a better understanding of consulting first, we created a pros and cons list to show some of the general lifestyle and workflow benefits and maybe some of the cons as well. So I think, in my opinion, one of the best parts of consulting is the sheer amount of learning that you're going to be able to gain in just a couple years as a consultant. So I've heard the quote that a couple years as a consultant can be equivalent to 5 to 10 years in corporate, which is really huge. So just by working as a consultant and working across all these different high strategy problems, you'll be able to gain as much knowledge, business acumen, as someone who has worked in a corporate role for up to 10 years. So that's something that really appeals to me, is the amount of learning you gain and the exposure to all these different problems that businesses today face. And what this allows is, one, to let you build a huge network of people, because as a consultant, you're working with different clients across projects. Projects can range anywhere from a couple months to even up to a year. So, but you are getting a lot of different clients, as your career as a consultant, and as a result, you gain a huge network of people within different industries and different companies. And then what this allows is, when in the end you decide you might not want to stay in consulting, because a lot of people do tend to stay in consulting for just a few years as a sort of career starter and then go into an exit opportunity role. Because you have that huge network of people due to the many projects you've worked on, it really helps open up the amount of opportunities you can exit into. So, for example, if I had a client who worked in the tech industry, and I decided that in the future I want to go into the tech field, I can reach out back to my client that I worked with and see if there's a job opening. And so that's one of the really great perks, is the paths you open up from becoming a consultant out of college is really innumerable, and for some that's a really big draw. Of course, many people also associate consulting a lot of those fringe benefits, like the fancy hotels that the consultants stay in, the business class flights, as well as the team dinners. This does happen because as a consultant you are traveling pretty often at most firms, up to every week you're traveling to your client site, and as a result you do rack up the frequent flyer miles and things like that. But with that kind of luxury, and although that there are some aspects of that in consulting, there also come a few cons due to that kind of lifestyle that you should be aware of. Most notably, because you are traveling to your client site, typically the consulting lifestyle can be very travel heavy. The typical schedule at most firms is Monday through Thursday. You'll be on the road at your client's site. So, for half of your week, you could actually be staying in a hotel bed and not at your home. And for some, that could be a pretty draining lifestyle. That might appeal to some of you guys, especially when you're younger, but it could be a bit difficult to maintain relationships with people, your friends, your family. So you do want to really think about if that is the kind of lifestyle you're willing to live. And if not, there's always consulting firms that will staff locally as well. So the projects will only be in around your area, so you will be able to go home every night. And if that's something you prefer, you can look for those consulting firms as well. On top of that, the hours at consulting do tend to be pretty long compared to your average 8-hour workday. I found online that the average is around 12 hours a day. I'm not sure about the veracity of that fact, but maybe Rocco can speak a bit more about that later. But it is a relatively high-pressure environment. You are expected to deliver to your client with pretty fast turnaround times. So, always living up to client expectations is key, and that can result in some pretty high-pressure situations. So being able to handle that kind of stress is also important in consulting as well. Many of you also asked about common career paths within consulting, and I just listed here a pretty typical career path that I've kind of felt was due to all the consultants I've spoken with over the couple of years. A pretty typical path is to go into consulting after college for 2 or 3 years, and then to go and get your MBA. And then after your MBA, you can return back into consulting for another few years with a significantly higher pay salary, or you can go directly into an exit opportunity, as I mentioned before. So some common exit opportunities is one, going into corporate, which means like working at a company, that's not a consulting firm. So Microsoft, Kmart, you name it. Also, because you'll be gaining all that business experience, a lot of consultants do end up becoming entrepreneurs or going into a startup because they've learned how to manage business problems. So it's very useful to have when you're trying to start your own company. Really, the industries you can go into after consulting are endless because all the skills you gain as a consultant are really valuable. So you can apply them anywhere. It really just depends on what you want to do, and consulting can probably, connect you to that industry in some way. So another big question from the surveys was knowing what the traits of a typical consultant were. We kind of compiled a short list of what we thought were important from, the consulting case competitions we've done and the consultants we've spoken to. I think one of the most important things is being data-driven. What I mean by this is when you're recommending to a CEO of a Fortune 500 company about a strategic change he should make, you better bet that he's gonna expect that recommendation to be backed up with tons of data that really, beyond a doubt, will prove that that's the right step to make, or else he or she might not be willing to risk spending money to commit to that recommendation without the data backing that up. So you really got to get into that mindset of having a hypotheses-driven attitude. So having an idea first, and then searching for the data to back that up, and then proving or disproving that hypothesis, and working your recommendation around that, rather than coming up with the recommendation first and then just going with that. Additionally, being a team player is very important because as a consultant, you work on project teams ranging from 3 to 5 teammates, if not more. So, you're going to be spending a lot of time with your team, especially if you're on the road with them. So being able to work with them and get along with them is going to be really crucial, or you're going to have a pretty miserable time on your project. And then finally, one more thing I like to point out is being a strong communicator. When you are delivering your recommendations to your client, you need to sound confident, or else your client might be skeptical about the recommendations he's getting. So being able to present and communicate your ideas effectively and concisely is going to be key as well. And there's certainly a lot of opportunities at NYU to develop those skills. And then in terms of the more hard skills that you might need, PowerPoint and Excel are going to be key tools that you'll be using as a consultant. PowerPoint, you'll need to build slide decks for your clients and presentations. So you'll be using it pretty often. And then Excel, for modeling and data analyses as well, to munch all the data and to analyze that. And then, of course, just having general business acumen is going to be important as a business consultant. And if you're not, for those of you who might not be in NYU Stern, don't worry, because there's tons of opportunities at NYU to still build your business knowledge without having to be a part of the school. You can definitely attend classes at NYU Stern, even as a non-Stern student. And you can also attend consulting clubs, case competitions on campus, things like that. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities, and don't let the fact that you're not in the business school discourage you from trying to go into a career in consulting, because consulting firms definitely hire a lot from outside business schools, as Rocco can attest to later on. And finally, I'd like to quickly give you an overview of some of the top firms within consulting, just so that you know the names. So if you ever do come on campus, you'll be able to know that they're consulting firms, and you can attend those information sessions. So the big three in consulting, as they're known, is McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. These are three of the oldest consulting firms in the industry, and typically the most highly regarded due to the projects they work on, the people they recruit. They do work with a lot of high-profile companies, as you saw, like the Bank of England for McKinsey. Unfortunately, they don't recruit very much from NYU, and by that I don't mean they don't come out of NYU at all, but that definitely doesn't mean you can't get into these firms. You just need to network extra hard, and also build a really stellar resume to get your resume picked out of the pile from the interview into the interview pile, and then also have really strong interviewing skills. So it's a bit harder than if you attended some other schools from NYU, but it's definitely not impossible, and I do know people who have gone on into these firms after NYU. And also, I wouldn't let the prestige factor blind you from applying to other firms as well, because there are tons of other really great consulting firms that recruit from NYU, most notably the Big Four. The Big Four are traditionally, accounting firms, but they also have really strong consulting arms as well. Especially Deloitte and PwC have bought out some of the best consulting firms on the market. So Deloitte acquired the Monitor Group, and PwC acquired Booz & Co., two really, really high-tier consulting firms, and they've integrated them within their companies, and now Deloitte and PwC have really strong consulting practices as well, and EY and KPMG are growing theirs as well. And then on top of that, there's strategy shops, like the more pure strategy consulting firms that you can apply to as well, that are also very elite, very competitive to get into, but really look really great on your resume, and a really great career builder as well. And then finally, for those of you who might not want to go into traditional management consulting or strategy consulting, there's a lot of niche consulting firms as well that apply to whatever interest you might have. So for example, if you are interested in technology consulting or just technology in general, Accenture and IBM are huge players within the tech consulting field. If you're a marketing major or want to be a marketing major, Lippincott has consulted for some of the top brands in the world. So I wouldn't be surprised to see McDonald's, Coca-Cola within their client list. They're one of the most well-known brand consulting firms. And it's really not just limited to these 4 types of consulting niche firms. Like any industry you can think of, whether it be fashion consulting, startup consulting, tourism consulting, you name it, there's probably a consulting firm dedicated to that industry. So you can really, if you like the problem-solving nature of consulting, but you don't really want to work in a general management consulting role, you can definitely specialize at one of these niche firms. And I encourage you guys to all do your research for what appeals to you. So that's kind of a quick overview of the consulting industry, the consulting pros and cons. I hope you guys got a quick run through of that. But in case you haven't and you have more questions, Rocco here is here to answer them for you. So as I mentioned, Rocco is a consultant from Deloitte. Rocco, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hey everyone. So my name is Rocco Puno. I am a first-year consultant at Deloitte, which means I've been with the firm for 2 years now. I graduated from CES with a degree in economics, which is not really common within Deloitte. We have mostly trainees at the firm, so it's not impossible. Um, yeah, and I've really enjoyed my time here at Deloitte, and I'm looking forward to explaining that to all of you and sort of giving you an overview of what I do day to day.
Yeah, sure. So we actually collected some questions from the people in the audience. So Julie, you want to ask the first question?
All right, sure. So our first question for you is, what makes you drawn to consulting?
So I definitely remember, when I was sitting in your shoes and wondering sort of what I wanted to do. And I didn't really have a specific goal, but I knew that I wanted a job that was dynamic. I didn't want a typical 9 to 5 job. I wanted a job that would constantly challenge me and put me, quote unquote, under the fire. And consulting is exactly that. Not only are our projects very different from month to month, but our days are very different, which always keeps you on your toes and keeps you learning at every corner that you turn. To give you a sense for the kind of variation that Deloitte has, or consulting has in general, is that we work in projects within different industries, so across energy, media, healthcare, financial services, and then within those industries you have service lines, which basically means the type of work that you do. So that can be anything from strategy to finance, to business model transformation, supply chain optimization. There are plenty of different permutations across industry and service line. And then within your own project, you could have different roles as well. So to me, I think that's what appealed to me most is the fact that I'm constantly challenging myself, constantly learning in different ways. And lastly, to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And consulting sort of provided me a good way to get a general knowledge of good business acumen, while at the same time giving me a good exit opportunity as well. Carrie mentioned this earlier, but consultants really have good opportunities even if you work 1 year with the firm. A lot of companies outside really value the work that you do as a consultant. And so I think that was one of the very large draws for me.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely resonate with a lot of those points as to why I'm interested as well. So another question that our audience had was, maybe just running through quickly an example of a project you worked on. Obviously, you might need to maintain some confidentiality, but just like the type of work it was, maybe what industry, and kind of like the workflow you did.
Sure. So I can describe 2 projects that I thought were very different. The first is for a large utility company out in Waltham, Massachusetts. So I traveled to Boston. And what we did for them was a big labor analytics project. We were working directly with their finance department. And I really liked this project because I felt it was the project that I got the most responsibility. I had a client counterpart that I would meet with every week, and I would present to both my client and to their external auditors and to a bunch of different stakeholders within the company. And so Carrie alluded to this earlier, but I think consulting sort of gives you very unique opportunities that I don't think you can find very easily in corporate, in that they give you a lot of responsibility right away, which again gives you a lot of learning opportunities. And then the project that I'm currently on now is a commercialization strategy project, which means the company came to us and asked to actually help them set up a business. And within this business, they've asked us to help develop a product. So we help develop this product, and what we're doing right now is trying to commercialize that and trying to figure out what that means across the whole value chain. from marketing to figuring out who our customers are, to pricing, and everything in between. It's kind of just starting up a business from scratch, which has been a very, very good experience for me.
Great. So another question that a lot of people showed interest in, they wanted to know what the day-to-day tasks of a consultant were, and what entails the day in the life of a consultant.
Yeah. If you talk to any consultant, everyone, whenever you ask them a question, the most frequent answer that you'll get is it depends. I had talked to you about this earlier, but even within a project, our day-to-day can be so different. There's some days we can get out extremely early, and then there are days when we can get out in the wee hours of the morning. But it really depends on the project. For that energy company that I was talking about earlier, I was very, very heavy on Excel, and barely used anything else. For this project that I'm on now, I'm on PowerPoint a lot. I'm doing some modeling, which has to do with the revenue projections, some research as well. So it's really just a combination of many different things, which again will be dictated by your project and by your role.
Cool. Yeah, that's really helpful. So I guess if you could quickly, so Rocco is a lead recruiter for the business analyst program at NYU. So we want to ask a recruiting question at the end, but before that, could you just maybe talk about what do you think the most challenging aspect of your role is?
Sure. I think it probably has to be the ambiguity. The fact that and not know what your day is going to look like. You can, that's the day-to-day operations, but you can also just come into a project not knowing, anything about the industry, not knowing anything about the type of problem that your client is facing. It's daunting, and it is in fact very challenging. But at the same time, I think it's what makes you learn the most. It's what trains you the best. It's what gives you and puts you in a position to really succeed. I don't know about the other consulting firms, but I know at Deloitte, we very much foster a team culture. And so, all these tasks may seem daunting, but your team is there. You have fellow analysts, other managers within your home office that are really there to support you, to give you as much guidance as you need. And so all of this might sound very challenging, but structures are in place to really help you out, and the firm really wants to see you succeed. And so they do everything in their power to help you do so.
Great, yeah, great answer. Okay, so then since you are a lead recruiter for NYU, you want to give some recruiting tips or anything you'd like to say about recruiting to the rising juniors and the rising seniors in the audience?
Sure. So there is this thing in consulting called the airplane or the airport test, and what it is that everyone wants to see your grades within a certain standard. They want to see robust extracurricular activities, but more than anything else, our primary product that we're selling is our people. And so we want people that are very personable, people that are easy to talk to, and people that are just interesting. So I would recommend, just being yourself. If you do end up, try to network as much as possible. That can only help you. And if you're young, if you're still freshmen, sophomores, I would encourage finding extracurricular activities that sort of prove that you can be a good consultant. And what I mean by that is, as Carrie mentioned earlier in his slides, there are certain traits that we look for in consultants. Being a team player, being data-driven, etc. I would try to fill your resume with things that prove you are that trait or you have that trait. So for example, to prove that you're a team player, like, join have a leadership position in a club, or be part of an intramural team, whatever it may be. Just let that sort of jump out of the page. Let that characteristic show through whatever is in your resume, and however you sort of message and brand yourself.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, thanks so much. That's all the questions we had. If you have nothing else to say to the audience, I mean, you can feel free to head out. But thanks so much for coming on. I hope everyone found that really useful. And you guys can definitely expect to see Rocco on campus this fall, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. I love recruiting, to be honest. I love talking to students. So, reach out to me. I'll be on campus on sometime in September, the first week of September, for an information session. That's open to everybody. So I do hope to see a lot of you there, and look forward to chatting then.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So we'll go back to the presentation now.
Okay, so going off of Rocco's last point about getting more involved in extracurriculars, now I'm going to talk more about different resources and extracurriculars that are available at NYU to consulting. So first, I'm going to talk about the management consulting track. So Stern created a lot of these different tracks for students, which are essentially a list of courses designed to help you develop skills in areas of interest. So for the management consulting track, it's designed to help you learn relevant skills to consulting, such as data analysis and problem solving. Although the track is only for Stern students, any NYU student can use the resources available. For example, you can look at the courses for an idea of what classes you'd like to take yourself. And the MCT website also has a lot of great resources that anyone can access. So they have a year-by-year checklist, which essentially maps out suggestions of what someone interested in consulting should do their freshman through senior year. They also have a list of leadership and internship opportunities, along with what year is eligible to apply for each opportunity. And you also have the ability to create an MCT student profile. So how that works is if you're doing the management consulting track, then they can list you on the website along with what relevant coursework that you've completed. Another resource that's open to everyone is the Casing Interview Bootcamp that MCT runs every semester. So what that is, it's an 8-week workshop run by a second-year MBA where every week they practice a different type of case interview to learn how to best structure your thinking and communicate it to your interviewer. So I definitely strongly encourage you all to read more about it at the links below, and definitely check out the second link because that is the website for MCT. If you aren't able to catch any of the links right now, that's totally fine because we will be posting these on the Facebook event page after the webinar, so don't worry if you aren't able to get them right now. All right, so moving on, next is the NYU branch of 180 Degrees Consulting. So for those of you who don't know, 180 Degrees Consulting is a worldwide student-run organization that offers free consulting services to nonprofits and social enterprises. Students of all schools are encouraged to apply regardless of major or year. So how this works is at the end of each semester, 180 will recruit consultants for the following semester. So for example, consultants for this coming fall were recruited back in April, and consultants for next spring in 2016 will be recruited around November. Once you're a part of this organization, 180 will train you on how to approach consulting issues and deal with clients. Then you're placed on a client project with 3 other consultants and a project manager as well as a consulting director. So this is to ensure that you really have others with more experience and more knowledge to turn to for guidance and support. And each team also works closely with 2 consulting professionals to ensure that the final result that we present to clients is up to par with professional consulting organizations. It's really a great opportunity to gain experience in consulting and be able to make a valuable impact on these organizations that are doing great things. Although it is a competitive interviewing process, it is one of the best ways to gain consulting experience on campus, so I do definitely encourage you all to apply the next recruiting cycle, which will happen around November. If interested, definitely follow 180 on Facebook and sign up for their newsletter at the links below so you're notified when the next recruiting cycle happens. So moving on, next is Management Consulting Group, which is also another great consulting organization on campus. MCG has meetings and workshops on consulting-related topics every week on Mondays at 12:30. And although this is a Stern club, it is definitely open to all NYU students. They partner with a lot of firms, so there are a lot of great networking and recruiting opportunities. And as you can see, last year some of the firms that they partnered with included Deloitte, Accenture, and IBM, among others. They also host a boot camp on case interviewing each semester. So these are run by a senior undergraduate, so they've just been through the whole recruiting process. So they have a lot of first-hand advice and knowledge to offer you. And these boot camps will take place Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. The room hasn't been announced yet, but if you're interested in these and interested in joining MCG, definitely follow their Facebook page linked below. Join their org sync for updates once the semester starts, and we've also linked their website below, which on top of listing what upcoming events MCG is holding, it also has a bunch of great casing resources from case interview practice to books on casing, so definitely check that out as well. Okay, so this slide, it is really text heavy, but we just wanted to give a quick shout out to some other consulting opportunities that are on campus. So first is the Net Impact Collaborative Experience, which is a peer-to-peer social impact consulting workshop. Every Tuesday evening, what they do is Net Impact will invite a student-run social impact startup in to pitch their ideas and receive feedback. So if you want to offer some help to these student-run social startups or gain some more insight on the consulting front, definitely I encourage you to follow Net Impact and drop it on their meetings. Next are some professional development programs that are hosted by the Stern Undergraduate Office of Student Engagement, or OSE. Time and place for all of these will be emailed out by the Office of Student Engagement during the semester. Unfortunately, I do think these are catered specifically for Stern students, so I will just give a brief summary of what each one does right now. Excuse me. So right now is, first is the Industry Introduction Series. So basically, companies and alumni will give students a brief rundown on what the consulting industry is like. There's also the Case Walkthrough Series, where professionals will present and walk through a client case with students to kind of give students more insight into what they actually do. And lastly is the Professional in Residence, where consulting professionals will come to Stern and meet with students one-on-one, whether it be to review resumes or answer questions about any careers in the industry. Okay, so next is case competitions. For those of you who don't know what case competitions are, what happens is students are presented with a simulation of a real-world business issue, and then your team is tasked to develop the best solution. Definitely encourage everyone to participate in case competitions, no matter what your experience level is, because it's honestly a great way to gain realistic hands-on experience in regards to what consulting is really like, and it's a great opportunity to enhance the relevant skill set necessary to become a successful consultant. On top of that, along with case competitions, the companies that usually host these case competitions will assign you a specific mentor to help give advice and guide your team along, and a lot of times they have these networking opportunities with professionals that are set aside specifically for the participants of the case competition. So we have some quick tips for when you're competing in a case competition. So first of all, you're going to be working with your team for a very long time, so definitely choose people that you can get along with. But at the same time, you need to pick members whose skills complement one another. So for example, it's really great if all 4 members are awesome at analyzing data or doing financials. But if you don't have any member who's good at putting together a presentation and telling a coherent story, then the skills of the members who are very good at analyzing data can't shine as much. So definitely pick members whose skills complement one another to create the best team possible. Secondly, even though it is a simulation of a business situation and it isn't a real-world business case, support all of your arguments with real research and data to make it that much stronger. And lastly, when you're putting together your presentation, when you're practicing with your team, anticipate what questions the judges will ask about your argument and about your proposal, and be prepared to answer with strong replies backed by data. So in terms of consulting competitions that are in terms of consulting competitions that are available at NYU, there is one, Deloitte holds one in January, and this is a great opportunity for freshmen and sophomores because it is only open to freshmen and sophomores, so you don't have to worry about competing against those students, juniors and seniors who have more years of experience than you. We personally did compete in this competition, and it was an amazing learning experience. And personally, I came back. I studied abroad in the fall, and then I came back and competed in this during winter break, and I thought that was a great opportunity because juggling case competitions that take so many hours on top of classes and extracurriculars can be tough sometimes. So because this is over winter break before classes start, you can really dedicate as many hours as you want to it. But unfortunately, if you are studying abroad in the spring, you won't be able to participate because some of the later rounds do spill over into the spring semester. Next is the PwC Industry Analysis Case Competition, which is hosted by MCG. And in the past, they have had over 200 participants. These are open to all NYU undergrads, regardless of year, freshmen through seniors. But teams composed of only freshmen have made it to the semifinals in the past, so freshmen should definitely not be discouraged. These listed are the actual dates for the coming semester. However, the registration link posted will not be open until after the kickoff. So if you're interested, definitely follow MCG for further announcements in terms of where the kickoff will be and more details.
Yeah, and I just like to add on real quick that I did compete in this case competition when I was a freshman, and I went into the competition having no idea what consulting was. And even though our team, didn't do so great, looking back, the amount I learned about the industry of consulting and the work that they do was enough to make me really interested in consulting in the future. So this is what really first got me hooked on consulting, this case comp. And because it comes so early within the semester, it really is one of the first opportunities to really experience the work of a consultant. So highly recommend it, especially for the freshmen who want to get an early start. This is a great opportunity.
Okay. So
yeah, and then finally, there's also a KPMG International Case Competition that will be held later in the semester in November. Personally, I don't think either of us have competed in this case competition, so we can't speak that much about it. But the info is here, and the slides will be available after, so you can go back and read. It's also on their website. But just know that the info session is on Wednesday, November 4th, and the kickoff is on November 20th. And then finally, for those about to recruit, and even for those who want to learn a bit more about consulting, we've posted a couple links to some outside sources that we've personally used to learn more. In terms of just general consulting info, I really like Case Interview Secrets and managementconsulted.com. They have a lot of great articles that really give an in-depth overview of the consulting industry. Vault and the Consultant Lounge are also two good sources as well. And then for those who are about to go into interviews and want to prep their case interviewing, these three links are kind of the standard in case interview prep. Case Interview Secrets by Victor Chen was what I personally used, and I really enjoyed it. And Case in Point by Mark Constantino, is like the book that everyone recommends reading. And then a new thing that has recently been gaining traction is called Prep Lounge, and it allows you to have a Skype call with other aspiring consultants who are about to interview, and you guys can mock interview each other. And the site provides a bunch of free cases that you both of you can use to mock interview. It's a really great layout and easy to use. And if you're not worried about Skype interviewing with some random person, it's a really great opportunity to get mock interviewing in. And then finally, just if you want to read more about the work that consulting firms have done, BCG Perspectives, McKinsey Insights, and Bain Publications are all published some of their case studies, and it's really fascinating, just learning more about the changes within the industries that they have done their projects in. For those who are just interested in business in general, these are great publications to follow.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the recruiting timeline.
Yep.
Yeah, so a lot of these firms, they have different recruiting dates. If there's any firm that you are interested in particular, definitely start looking at their resume drop deadlines now, because the worst thing is to go look into it later on and find that the deadline already passed. But here is a general recruiting timeline that we've gotten through research, and later on we also have reached out to recruiters of different firms and online to give you some more specific recruiting dates for different firms. So the first thing that you guys should look out for is the career fair that's happening September 10th. So definitely start preparing for that pretty soon. Around October is when full-time application deadlines are, as well as the full-time interviews. And then later on, January 28th is a spring job and internship fair, and then for summer internships for rising seniors, the application deadlines will be around February, and that's also when the interviews will be.
Yep.
Okay, so the first company that we have is Bain & Company. So although they do not recruit specifically from NYU, as Carrie mentioned before, you can still submit your application online. The URL we posted here. Keep in mind that because they do receive a lot of applications, they will only follow up with candidates invited to interview. And as you can see, their deadline is a little earlier for full-time in late August, and then for internship, it's around December, January.
So here's a timeline for Deloitte. There's a lot of different dates because Deloitte has so many different divisions within their consulting practice. So you guys can go back and take a look to find the dates that you're interested in. But just to clarify, Deloitte Consulting has 3 different service areas: strategy and operations, technology, and human capital consulting. So depending on where your interests lie, there are different information sessions for each of those areas, as well as they'll be at the career fair, and they'll also be having resume drop deadlines, which you can all find on this table here. And then for those of you who are interested in internships, that really starts on November 12th with their information session at Wasserman, which kind of kicks off their internship recruiting, or which is called their Summer Scholar Program. So you'll definitely be seeing a lot of Deloitte on campus, Deloitte Consulting specifically. So feel free to go back to this slide deck after this webinar to find the dates that you are interested in.
Okay, next is EY, and you can see that they have a bunch of information sessions with clubs and at Wasserman throughout September. For full-time, their resume deadline is late September, and then for their internship, their resume deadline is early October, so that is earlier than the general recruiting timeline that we posted before.
KPMG also will definitely be on campus. They have their advisory practice, which is kind of where their consulting services lie. So they'll have an information session on September 28th, and then they'll have application deadlines by the end of September. And then after that, in October, they'll have networking socials and then on-campus interviews as well. So for all of these, definitely keep your eye out on Wasserman. If you haven't already, you should be checking Wasserman daily to see when all these information sessions are.
Next is Oliver Wyman. So they do have a fall recruiting webinar Friday, September 11th at 4 p.m. And then their full-time application deadline is September 13th. So just keep that in mind if you're interested in recruiting for them.
Yeah. And just to clarify, this is full-time only. But even if you're a rising junior, it would be good to attend this webinar that they're hosting because it expresses interest and you get to learn more about the firm. And honestly, Oliver Wyman is a really great firm. So, okay, yeah. And then Towers Watson, they're known for their HR consulting. They'll be having an information session in late September, and then another one in October for their actuarial practice. So they'll be recruiting for internships and full time. So definitely keep an eye out for them if you're interested in benefits, HR, that sort of consulting.
Okay, and just for a few additional firms, we have NARA Economic Consulting, Baker Tilly, and Lippincott. So as you can see, most of these information sessions are in September, as a lot are. So definitely keep an eye out for all of the September dates and make sure to keep them in mind.
Yeah, so that's just some of the firms that we've compiled, on our research and our reaching out to recruiters. It's definitely not going to be all the firms that recruit from NYU, so always be checking Wasserman for firms that you're interested in that might not be recruiting at NYU. Email the recruiters anyways, ask when their deadlines are. It's good to always be reaching out and to be keeping updated, on our CareerNet. So that's kind of what we had for you guys today. There are a couple more questions that were asked during the survey that we would like to address now. And also after this webinar, if you do have any more questions, feel free to email me and Julie. You'll see our emails on the next slide. And if we can't answer those questions, we can try to direct you to someone who can. But yeah, okay, so let's see. Some of the questions that were also asked that we might not have addressed yet is what are the major differences between in-house consulting and consulting firms? So to kind of clarify that, in-house consulting means it's kind of like going to corporate. So for example, going to Kmart to work in their corporate strategy department would be in-house consulting, and you'd be an employee of Kmart rather than being an employee of Deloitte who comes to Kmart to as like a consultant, an external consultant. So the question is, what are the differences in the lifestyle? I can actually kind of speak to this because I'm currently interning at an internal consulting within AOL and the Huffington Post. And in terms of lifestyle, one is obviously you're not going to be traveling to your client because your client is where you work. So that entire aspect of the lifestyle is probably going to be a lot better because you're not traveling every week. You're not having to sleep in a hotel. You can go home to your families at an average reasonable times every day. So I think in-house consulting lifestyle is definitely better than consulting if you don't want to be traveling all the time. In terms of projects, it's likely that you're not going to be working on as big a variety of projects because you're obviously limited to your one company. But because you'll be working in that company for so long, you'll be gaining a lot more like industry level knowledge over the course of the time, and you might be able to work on some more interesting high level projects because you have worked in that company for so long that they'll ask you to work on these very high strategy projects for the entire company. So projects, definitely not a wide variety of industry types. You'll just be limited to whatever your industry is. But yeah, in general, it's going to be a better lifestyle, and that's why a lot of people do end up going into corporate strategy after working at a consulting firm. But just be aware to get into these in-house consulting practices, you do typically, or most people have usually been a consultant for a consulting firm beforehand. In terms of pay, they probably offer a higher starting salary, but with slower pay raises. So they initially attract people from consulting with a high salary, but the rate at which your salary will be increasing will not be as high as if you were to stay in consulting, in a consulting firm, I mean. So that's another, that's a kind of trade-off that you'll have to make. So a lifestyle versus salary trade-off. But it's obviously a very popular route, and a lot of people do end up doing that as well.
So another question we received is, what are the common educational and professional backgrounds of people working in consulting? So this definitely ranges. Of course, it is dominated by business majors such as, finance, economics, management. But there are definitely also people who come from engineering backgrounds, for example, because everyone with different backgrounds, they have more to offer in terms of their skill set. And then a lot of it is learning on the job. So you don't need they don't look for a specific type of major when recruiting consultants.
They look for a specific type of person rather than a major. So like I've known philosophy majors who have gone on into consulting because they know how to think in that very logical way. So it's really the skills you have and the type of person, the way you think, that will really determine if you can recruit into a consulting firm. The major is honestly not as important as long as it's not completely unrelated.
Mm-hmm. But
honestly, don't worry so much about your major. Like, focus more on developing those skills and building your resume. What else? Is there anything else? Another question. Is there?
So experience needed for an introductory level job. As we mentioned before, a lot of it is learning on the job.
Right.
But of course, when they are recruiting, they do like to see on your resume that you have expressed some sort of interest in consulting, that you, as Rocco mentioned before, that you do exhibit some of the traits of a consultant, such as, being a good team player. Mm-hmm. But other than that, they don't expect you to have consulting experience when recruiting for consulting per se.
Yeah.
So just focus on, developing your skills.
Yeah, one of the things we hear pretty frequently from current consultants is that they didn't know about consulting until their senior year of college. So just the fact that you guys are here at this webinar right now puts you ahead of the curve, because at least you know what consulting is now. Yeah. So really take advantage of the time you have to learn more, determine if it's right for you, and if not, for the industry that is right for you. We're not trying to convince you all to go into consulting. We just want to expose more people to this industry because we think it is an interesting industry. So really take your time to determine what you want to do, and if you think it is consulting, then start looking at the resources that we posted. Feel free to reach out to us, and hopefully you can one day work in consulting.
Yeah. So definitely look at the resources we posted and look more into the organizations and clubs that we mentioned to get more involved in consulting, and to begin showing that you are interested in consulting on your resume.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it from us. These are our emails. So if you do have other questions, you can feel free to email us.
If we aren't able to answer your question directly, we'll definitely try our best to connect you with people who can. So feel free to reach out and don't be shy.
Yeah, definitely. Can they see us now? No. Okay, cool. So yeah, thanks for attending, everyone. We hope that it was helpful, and yeah, that's it. So have a good night. I don't know where to look.
Okay. I'll stop the broadcast.